Ride the wild wind. Hey, 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 hey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Ride the Wild Wind, where we talk about anything and everything to make wind energy more profitable with experts from the industry. And today we have one of those experts, Vivek Trivedi, with us. Vivek, thank you for
Thanks a lot,
joining
Boa,
us.
for having me here. I'm really glad to have this opportunity.
It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for taking time off your vacation from your time off to actually have this session. It's very much appreciated, and I'm sure we're all going to have a great time and share a lot of insights. So, Vivek, you have quite a unique experience. Actually, we share something in common. We both started out in oil and gas. So, and then we made the shift to the renewable energy. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that story. It's kind of interesting what you thought about wind energy first and then how it changed. You actually, when you made the decision to move, you went and got a master's degree and then have been in wind energy ever since, both on the, and I think one of the things that make you unique is you have experience both on the OEM side, the turbine manufacturer side, but then moved over to a client side, dealt with onshore, offshore, got to see the commercial side of things. But as a mechanical engineer by training, I think your heart still lies truly on more of the hands-on mechanical stuff, which is in a really interesting space right now as we move into more AI, but more interestingly, maybe robotics, which I know is a core focus area for you right now. Does that sound about right? Did I
More
leave
or less, you
anything
have
out?
pretty much well summarized.
Okay, all right. So let's start a little bit about that, very briefly, how you were in oil and gas, and then how you made the decision to move into wind and renewables in general, maybe, and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll take it from there.
In brief, to start, I'm a mechanical engineer, but when I started my career with gas turbines and got to visit all these big power plants. So I was always fascinated by how the energy, let's say, industry works as a whole and how massive it is. Over the years, the kind of trend and shift that I could observe that could be solar, wind, these things will be gaining a lot of traction, because the market is evolving. Back then, I started reaching out to experts and then decided that I do my master's here to really learn more about the technology, how everything works, how everything comes together, how a machine is designed. And that's basically how I, let's say, turned into the renewable side of the business. And since then, I'm here. I'm so happy that I got to be part of this fascinating area of energy.
Right. And so one of the obviously we when we talk about wind energy and within this podcast, we try to tie it to profitability, right? And one of the things people are doing to make it more profitable is make bigger turbines. The bigger the turbine, the economies of scale, blah blah blah. What's your take on that? The it's a big topic in the industry. I'd like to get your view on it. The turbines are getting bigger. How do you think that's playing out right now, and what it's going to look like in the near
I mean, I
future?
understand the rationale of making these turbines bigger, and I have initiated this discussion on LinkedIn many times, and I've got really interesting comments from people and really fascinating, views on it. But there is a broad consensus that this needs to stop somewhere. I have asked this question to multiple
Mm.
experts. I have asked this question to really people who have been in the industry for decades. And everybody has the same consensus that it needs to stop. And we need to focus on the reliability and the quality part of the business, because that what makes us better in the long run. So in general,
Okay.
I understand the LCOE part of it, but now since we have reached 15 megawatt, you can't imagine how huge that is. And somehow we need to
Mhm.
first learn to manage these assets, and then over the time we can maybe in 3 4 5 years revisit these decisions and go for the next ones. But now we need to stabilize and, let's say, look for a stable operational regime.
Okay, so you're not saying it can't grow, but what you're saying is we need to get comfortable with the reliability of the current large sizes first, and then maybe kind of like a step change, maybe over a period of time. Yeah, and I think that stabilization makes the whole supply chain kind of adapt easier as well. When things continuously keep growing, it's difficult to get, the turbine grows and the foundation grows, the towers grow. Like it's hard to standardize. And when you don't standardize, things get more
Exactly.
expensive,
Exactly. And the
obviously.
supply chain has to
Yeah.
really pick up the pace. And there are so many different elements involved here in the supply chain, and not everybody can keep up pace with all these developments. Yeah. And if
Yeah,
you have to keep up this, so imagine if I'm a small supplier and if I have to keep up pace with this huge demand that is, I need to continue to grow my components. Maybe I'm not able to keep up with the quality. Yeah. And that's basically where the
yeah.
challenges start becoming, because we want a robust product that lasts for 30, maybe 40 years.
Yeah, yeah, true. That's the one thing about the, in general, infrastructure, energy in particular. And sometimes it's tagged as not being innovative enough, but in reality is if it's not reliable, with so many skeptics out there, it's, people are just waiting on the fence to jump in and say, "Oh, we
Of
told you
course,
this wasn't
yes.
going to work." So we got to be very
Exactly.
careful about that. Okay. Well, and I want to relate that a little bit with onshore and offshore. So we talked about the turbines getting bigger, and most of that is happening on the offshore space due to logistical reasons, obviously. But how do you see the maturity of onshore and offshore? And do you think the onshore wind could play a more prominent role and a more, how would I say it, like an accepted role already? I wouldn't say it's a base load, but you know what I mean. Like, is it more reliable compared to
I
offshore?
mean,
You
I
think?
started my career with onshore when we were building 2.5 megawatt machines, and back then we were discussing, how big that will go. And since then, when I see now onshore business, it has already become, let's say, integral part of the energy systems. The maturity is already there. And also when it comes to the operational aspects of it, that how do you manage your turbines? How do you keep, everything that you need, all the infrastructure that you need to build around to manage the operations, that is already there. When it comes to maturity of offshore, I believe is still maybe a few years to go, mostly from the operational aspect. And since many of those turbines will be installed first time in the offshore environment, they have not been tried in the onshore environment. If they have been tried, it's just the prototype. Yeah. And when you come into the serial
Yeah.
production, we are talking about a different ball game here. It's a different level of, let's say, serial production and the quality that you have to manage during these things. So onshore, when you look, turbines are not going to get reached to now 10 megawatt. I think they are already stopping at 7, 8 maximum, and then maybe some kind of power upgrades
Yeah.
will come. But that's basically the optimal side. And of course, 8 megawatt, as soon as you reach there, you kind of reach to the limits of logistics in onshore. So there is a good
Yeah.
reason to stop there in onshore, but there is not a good reason in offshore. Yeah, because the vessels are still there. But when it comes to maturity, I believe onshore is already there. And I have also talked about a lot about this decommissioning aspect. So you might see that at least in Europe and also, in many other areas, the machines which were installed, they were 500 kilowatt, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, maximum 2.5 megawatt machines. Now we are talking about 5, 6, 7 megawatt machines and really good wind sites. So you can imagine the kind of potential that we have here and the kind of experience that is already built on the operation. So the next onshore wind projects that will happen, they will be like the real milestones of the industry, and I'm really looking forward to those.
Yeah. And in fact, yeah, this repowering is quite interesting. And the way it's kind of playing out, I had this conversation with another expert the other day, and he explained it very nicely. So the Europe is where most of the wind energy kind of got started. So we have the smaller turbines. Obviously, when you first start building, you go to the best wind sites and you start building there. And now the opportunity is to replace those, 1 megawatt, 1.5 megawatt turbines with something a lot bigger. So with the repowering, with 25 years or so having gone past, it's great. So it starts with Europe and then kind of goes to the east. And by the time it makes it way all the way back to Europe, it's time for another, it's another 25 years. So I think we're going to be talking about repowering in different parts of the world for quite a
Yeah.
quite a long time. So let's get more into the technical stuff and let's start talking about really cool, fancy stuff that's going on now and holds a lot of promise for the near future. So everybody's talking about AI. It's at Kavaken, it's at the core of what we do as well. But I'd like to get your opinion on it. And particularly, what are the things that you're seeing now that AI can do? But when I say AI, first let's talk about the data analytics. And then I want to get your opinion on AI beyond the data analytics, if you know what I mean. And then we'll dive into the robotics side of
Mhm.
things after that.
So what AI can do. I mean, I'm so much fascinated by it. We have so many use cases. We have so many exciting things going across. within the organization, outside the organization, in the industry. There is so much happening. When it comes to the
Can you give an example? A simple one, maybe something that is unique that you haven't heard or seen and discussed everywhere, but something that really caught your attention. So, oh,
I
this is
mean, the
kind of
unique
interesting.
example, you can simply pick up any troubleshooting, for example. Yeah. I
Perfect.
worked with technicians a lot and like to work with technicians a lot. So basically, their problems are always, kind of my problems, and I always associate myself more closely to them. So if I'm a technician, and I'm working on the machine, and when it comes to troubleshooting, there are so many different variables when you are on the machine. So you're trying to, let's say, troubleshoot. You went there with an idea that, okay, this is what I have to replace. I replace the fuse, I replace the relay. But when you open that and then you realize that, okay, it's a Pandora box, I really need to. And then you need that expert support. I see that expert support is coming very fast in the form of AI, to the
Mm,
technician. They can simply,
mm,
for example, you can already do that with ChatGPT. You can open the video and you can ask
yeah,
it the question. It can, Gemini can do that, and all other AI models can do that. This is coming very fast that you will have that kind of that you open the cabinet and you say like, okay, I see the problem here, and then you get your instructions that okay, what you have to do next. And this way you can really optimize and increase the efficiency so much that because when you go on the machine, then you mean that you will basically troubleshoot it at the end of the day when you come back, and that's such a efficiency
yeah,
boost. It's coming how fast. It's basically we you are exploring, we are exploring.
yep, it is. Great. And how about robotics? I know that's very near and dear to your heart. Where are we now? What are so we've all seen the drones, quite sexy and cool and very useful. It's not just sexy, but it's actually quite useful. We've seen what the drones can do. We've seen what some robots can do in terms of cleaning the blades and so forth. So where do you see it now, and where do you see it going?
So drones have already been part of the industry for long. Let's be honest that all the blade inspections in the onshore area have been done by drones. Yeah. So smaller drones, they were already being used, and the capabilities kept on kept on evolving. So that you have better resolution, quality pictures, and then you have better platforms, better so which can do analytics and everything. Where we are now, that we are talking drones as logistics solution. So far they have been only part of like the inspection solutions, but we are talking about logistics solution, and this is serious business. Yeah. So there are many drone operators who are providing their services in this area, and logistics in offshore is a challenge because you can imagine that you can
Yeah,
get to the machine either via helicopter or via crew transfer vehicle or via this big service operations vessels. So these are really big vessels that you have to operate just to access the machine. At the moment we are talking about logistics of material, but the way things are shaping up,
mm,
how fast we will be doing the logistics of of humans say, I believe that future is not far away. It's just we have to be open to that, and as soon as that future we arrive there, the efficiency in offshore operations are manifold. Because if you are there,
yeah,
because first of all, when you put an offshore machine, you don't want it to stop. You want it to run 100% of the time whenever there is wind. And if it is stopped,
of-
then the
yeah.
accessibility of humans and the material, how fast and how efficient you can do. Everybody is trying to explore that. And in the offshore area, of course, it becomes a little bit more safer because you are just operating in the waters. And there are
Yeah.
so many advancements which have happened in the drone area recently, that they are really way safe to operate in the offshore area, considering in onshore area which are also happening, very complex drone operations are happening in onshore area, but still the use case might not be there for onshore because you can simply drive, but for offshore it's there.
And that's exactly what I wanted to that I wanted to get to the business case side of things because your role right now is a strategic asset manager, which means you have to understand the technical difficulties and all that, but also weigh it against, what's the return if I were to invest. How do you do that when it's a new thing? You don't, it's just developing. It hasn't been proven. How do you decide which ones, what initiatives to focus on and put money and resources and time on, and which ones to kind of say, no, we won't deal with
That's
that
for
now.
all these use cases. Of course, you have to convince your management. You have to convince your leaders that
Yeah.
this makes sense. There are factual numbers behind it, and as soon as the technology gets mature, we will have really good returns on on this investment, and that's the logical progression. So when it comes to, like, if I tell you a simple use case for offshore, really simplified, an offshore machine, when you are putting it there, if it is stopped for a day, we are talking about a couple of thousands of euros. Yeah, that one stop day is sometimes enough to cover for the month of operations of drone. Yeah, considering how cheap drones are becoming,
Yeah.
and that's basically where you have to weigh in that how much is your stop
Yeah.
days and how
Right.
much you can, let's say, leverage the technology to reduce those stop days, and that's where the synergies come in. And then of course there are many other synergies from sustainability perspective, that you will be using less fuel, you will be operating with the battery, all those kind
Yeah.
of things. And then the
Yeah.
drones are also operating, can be operated completely remote, and that's basically what we proved recently, and also being proven by other operators, that you can operate the drones completely with remote pilots, and you don't really need to hire somebody or put somebody just to operate those drones. So that's why things are emerging fast.
Yeah, and there's an element of safety in some of the other solutions as well, which obviously plays a very heavy role in those decisions. Okay, awesome, great. This was, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I noticed myself just watching you speak as you were talking. So thank you, and I'm sure our viewers will enjoy it as well. My question to you is, and this is how I like to end all these podcasts. What is the one thing you don't like about the industry? And I like ending with this question is it leaves us with something to think about that we can improve in the industry.
I like most of the things about industry, and there are things that I am very critical about. But one thing that I don't particularly, I mean, it's something that can be improved, is the transparency. Is the transparency of the information, of the data exchange that is happening between different stakeholders across. Yeah, you can't sit on the data
Right.
and try to act that this is like the confidential data, because if we don't align well now, then then the whole industry suffers. Yeah? Whole The profitability for everybody goes down. Yeah? And these are the things we have to talk about.
Right.
So if I have to say one word, transparency. Everybody has to be more transparent to each other, talk about issues, and improve those things.
And when you say that, I know everybody starts first thing that comes to mind is like the OEMs and that, but I we feel as Kavaken it goes beyond that as well. It's the insurance companies, it's
Yes.
the lenders, it's the technical consultants. The
Yes.
whole industry can actually benefit a lot from that information sharing and
Exactly.
transparency. Okay, great. Thank you, Vivek. As I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. And to all our viewers, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you on yet another episode. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks for the opportunity.